Dr. Ralph Ford, Chancellor of Penn State Behrend, and you are listening to Behrend Talks. Today my guest is one of our students, James J.P. Goodsell. He's a December 2021 graduate of Penn State Behrend, and invited James on because he clearly made his mark while he was here on campus, and he's decided to stay. But welcome to the program, JP.
Thanks.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about your background and all that you've done. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. It is quite impressive. You are a rare triple major. You earned this past December bachelor's degrees in finance, plastics engineering technology, and interdisciplinary business and engineering. You are also a graduate of the very prestigious Schreier's Honors College, where you wrote a thesis about the implementation of Industry 4.0 in the plastics industry. You've also excelled as a student athlete. You are the outside hitter for the Behrend men's volleyball team, and you helped lead the team in 2018 to our first Allegheny Mountain Collegiate Conference Championship, the first in program history. And you've been having so much fun after 4 years, or maybe 5 years, but 4+ years and 3 degrees. You decided to stay and pursue a graduate degree, as you said, the Masters of Manufacturing Management. So again, welcome. Could you just start and tell us, how did you decide to come to Penn State Behrend?
Yeah. So in my college admissions process, I was kind of looking around. I always knew I wanted to play a college sport. Obviously, volleyball is one of the top ones in my family. My older sister was an All-American. Both of my siblings play in college. My sister plays here. So I kind of always knew I wanted to play volleyball, and I always knew I had an aptitude for math and science, so I kind of thought engineering. And I kind of looked around at other schools at first. I didn't really want to come to Behrend at first because I knew, people from my hometown always came here, and I was like, I'm not sure if this is really the best fit for me, if it's just the easy pick. But after looking other places and visiting and meeting some of the faculty here, I just kind of knew this was the place for me to end up.
Well, it's often, it takes time to figure out, but you get that combination of the programs you want and then the athletic programs to go with it. And sometimes that's not an easy fit to find. And so you found it at Behrend. Did you find that was rare when you were looking at other schools?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of schools that had volleyball weren't necessarily engineering schools. So there were a couple that were decent engineering or in really good volleyball, or decent volleyball and really good engineering. But Behrend was kind of the best of both of those two. And then just from a standpoint of men's volleyball across the country, there's not that many schools that have it. So having it in the backyard pretty much from where I've grown up was kind of nice as well.
Well, I want to stick with the sports theme. If I'm reading your bio correctly, you played in 5 sports when you were in high school.
Yep.
And that's pretty significant. What were they, and why volleyball was clearly your favorite?
Yeah. So in the fall, I played both soccer and ran cross country. In the winter, I played basketball. And in the spring, I ran track up until the end of my freshman year, and then played volleyball as well.
Is this typical of the whole Goodsell family? It sounds as though you're a family of athletes.
Yeah, to some extent. They didn't necessarily diversify in sports as much as I did. I think my brother did 3 every year. My older sister, who was pretty good at volleyball, only did 2, just track and volleyball. And then my younger sister did track and volleyball as well. We're all just kind of competitive, so we're always out there doing something.
And 2 of you ended up here at Behrend.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's a great story. Well, it sounds as though you knew you wanted engineering and plastics before you came here. Was that your primary choice that you were looking at?
Not necessarily. I knew engineering for sure. I was kind of looking at both mechanical and plastics when I visited, but after meeting Mr. Meckley and some of the plastics faculty, I just kind of knew that with how energetic and welcoming they were, that it'd be a great fit to pursue.
Well, they have a lot of collegiality there. A great program to sell, and like you say, many students come in and they meet with them, and they decide to do that. And I don't know if you know, sadly, Mr. Meckley, John Meckley, is retiring at the end of this year, and it will be the passing of a legend from the plastics program. Yeah, we will miss him. So you came here, you ended up in plastics engineering, and then you somehow decided you would pursue 2 more majors. Why did you come to that choice?
So I'd actually planned on going for 2 before I got here. So when I first visited, I met with Mr. Meckley and then Dr. Parente from the IB department, because my dad, as you've kind of met on the podcast before, he runs a plastics company, and I thought, I like the lifestyle he lives. I think that I could do what he does. So I was going, I need some business fundamentals and then the technical knowledge of plastics to try and go into that type of industry. So I had planned on that for a while. And then after talking to Dr. Prente, I think my either sophomore or junior year, she had said, another 3 classes and you could have another degree. So I started looking at what other ones I could mix in there with IB, and finance was kind of the best fit from only need to take 3 classes. And then speaking with some industry professionals, they said, it's harder to teach yourself finance than some of these other degrees could have been, so it's better to get professionally trained at school rather than try and do it on your own. So I added that one in as well.
So finance is tough, and it is good to have that background mixed with all that you've done. Did you find when you went through, do you have, I hate to ask it this way, any favorite out of the 3, or did they all integrate well? How did all that picture fit together?
IB and finance definitely integrated well, considering there was only a 3 class difference to get them both. I'd say probably the plastics was my favorite. I just really like software and Excel, so that dealt the most with it. Finance was a close second with the Excel. But yeah, I'd say plastics was probably my main focus through undergrad and probably my favorite out of the 3.
So how did you manage all of this? You've got 3 majors you're studying, you're a volleyball player. It sounds like a pretty difficult road to take.
Yeah, at times it definitely wasn't easy. It was just a matter of putting aside time to get things done. I'm a pretty efficient worker when I put my mind to it, but if I don't set aside some time, I'll be out in the computer lab till 3 in the morning trying to get an assignment done and then waking up at 9 to go to class again in the morning. So definitely at times where I struggled with that, especially my sophomore year. I think I took 19 credits and like 15 hours worth of lab on top of that, and we were in volleyball season, so I had to understand that I had to let some sleep go, which I would have liked to do, but it's just making the commitment to yourself and saying, I can do this if I put the time in, and I just put the time in to make sure I got it done.
And while you did that, you ended up with very good grades in all of your programs as well, too. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty impressive. So do you have any advice, let's say, for other students or anybody? Like, what was any philosophy or any time management tricks that you've learned through this process?
I think it all kind of depends on the person. So I was pretty good I had a calendar app on my phone, and I'd put in, do your homework, and I'd put a time on it at like 5 o'clock. And, that was really all I needed to make sure that I got stuff done. I know a lot of people don't work that way. So I'd say it's kind of like studying. You kind of have to find the style that suits you best. So like all through undergrad, I was a note card guy. If I wrote something down on a note card, I knew it, and that was it. Yeah. So other people obviously are, visual learners, are more hands-on. So it's just a matter of, can you identify the style that you work best with and then enhance that to make the most of your time?
You still found time to socialize and make friends while you were here as well?
Yeah, it helped being on the volleyball team. Most of those guys are probably some of my best friends around here. But, just being on an athletics team, you start to meet people. I'm in the athletic trainers room because I'm hurt all the time, but then I start meeting all the people on the other teams who are hurt all the time, and then, meet the people who aren't hurt all the time, and then half the people on campus because they're all in there.
Yeah, it's a significant number of students who are student athletes here, and it's a tight-knit group. On top of that, you also worked in industry while you were in school. In fact, 4 separate internships. You worked at Viking Plastics, Truck Light, Comar, and Beaumont Technologies. Do I have that correct, first of all?
Yeah.
Well, that's impressive in and of itself, I will tell you that. What did you learn? What were the experiences that you learned? What were the key things you learned in those internships?
They were all kind of different. At Viking Plastics, it was kind of like an overall view of the company. I was really early on in my, academic career, so it was just kind of get the broad concepts, kind of see each part of the company and kind of move around that way. At Trucklight, it was more of like a data management type of thing, so understanding how systems work, why systems are in place, and how to make them more efficient. Comar was a lot of learning like the medical side of plastics. There's a lot more regulation and rules and documentation that occurs there. And then Beaumont was more of like a research job, which actually played into my senior projects later. But that one was more of pushing the boundaries of what people understand in the plastics industry and kind of seeing where that can take you.
So what particular skills did you pick up that you didn't pick up in school?
I don't know if there's any skills I'd say that I necessarily picked up that I didn't already have some experience learning in school. I think the one that probably would stick out the most was Beaumont did a lot of training. So some of the stuff that we had in class, was very theoretical, and they had a bunch of different classes for practicality. So like mold flow is a class that we take here. And I went through a 5-day mold flow course there and saw some differences in what people will actually do in the industry because of time and financial constraints versus if you have an ideal and you can spend as much time and money on it as you want, this is what's going to happen at school.
Yeah, and you couldn't learn from a better place about mold flow and than Beaumont Technologies. They really are experts. But how about communication, teamwork? I'm assuming anything different there from your academic experience?
Probably there's more of a focus on communication. You just have to be on top of what you're doing all the time. Basically, just making sure you check in with your boss every day and, you know, if you've got a project running, updating them on that, which you won't necessarily do in school unless there's graded check marks. You're not going to go to your teacher every day and say, I've done this, this, and this is what I'm doing next. So that was kind of a different step for that kind of stuff. From a teamwork perspective, it's kind of similar to being on like a volleyball team, you know, making sure each person's doing their job, staying on top of their tasks, and basically forming a cohesive unit and not getting in arguments and that sort of thing.
It's highly valued by industry, the ability to work with others, and you just have to go out and experience it. Now, I want to step back. So you're just graduated this last year. So your last 2 years of education have really been impacted by COVID. And, you know, what were some of the largest takeaways, or what was the impact that you saw?
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was kind of the idea that 80% of school or 80% of whatever you do is just showing up. I know a lot of people said that their education was kind of diminished by COVID and kind of diminished by Zoom University or whatever they were calling it. But I found that if you're on track and you actually stay and you focus on class and you're there all the time, you actually got about the same education you would have had. I mean, obviously some of like the plastics lab experiences and hands-on stuff might not be as normal as you'd like it to be, but if you showed up and you put the time in, you could get the same type of education. And I mean, that kind of applies to work. If you're always there and you're always focused, you're going to do better than if you're not.
I think you've hit it on the head. I often say to students, showing up is, 80 to 90% of it. Maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but if you don't show up and you're not there, and what you learned in college is that you have to learn a lot on your own, and that's a big transition. Did you see that when you went from high school to college?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. You know, I didn't take too many classes my last couple of years of high school, taking a lot of college stuff and then working at Viking Plastics, kind of as you saw. But a lot of that stuff was, you get walked through every little step. And when you got here, it was they'll walk you through the overview of steps, and then you have to learn how those steps equate to using an equation or using something else. And, a lot of it's on you.
On top of that, you were 4 years playing volleyball, but you are playing a fifth year right now. Is that correct? And why were you able to do that?
So when COVID shut down pretty much the entire country, what was it, 2019 or 2020, our volleyball season got canceled. We were on like a spring break trip in Chicago, and we're coming back, and our coach goes, we might be going home from school for a week, and then that week turned into the whole rest of the year.
Yeah.
So since our season was canceled, we got a blanket waiver that we would all get another season. And then the next year, actually, our season was shortened again, so we got another waiver. So technically, I could go for another year after this if I wanted to. I don't plan on it, but I could have had a sixth year because of COVID as well.
Yeah, I think the NCAA did the right thing, and they made it flexible so students could get that extra year of competition. And, you just made me think it was, it was just about 2 years ago in March, and we all thought we were coming back and that it would be 1 or 2 or 3 weeks and we'd all be back. So fast forward, and we all know the world has changed. What's the experience been like this particular year? Is it close to normal? How do you feel about it?
I feel like it's different because of the program I'm in. So most of the manufacturing management program is online. So it's not necessarily normal in the standpoint of like you'll go on campus and see everyone, especially since most of my friends have graduated, moved on to real jobs and that kind of stuff. But from what I gather from my teammates and then being able to have fans back in the stands at games and stuff like that, it's definitely closer to normal than it was before and definitely moving in the right direction.
I want to switch back for a moment to this idea of scholar athlete or student athlete. So obviously it required a tremendous commitment on your part. You got really good at time management. But, I think one of the things we often hear is there are a lot of life lessons that are learned as well. I mean, are there any particular things that you take away from being a student athlete that you can see at this point in your career or your life?
I'd say, preparing is a huge part of, your job or your sport. We do a lot of times, watching film and looking at other teams and saying, here's what they're going to do. I mean, Phil does a great job of breaking down other teams and who their go-to guys are and how we're going to stop them. Being prepared from that standpoint is going to translate to your work life or your home life, knowing what you have coming up and how to fix it, that kind of thing for sure. I'd say, time management obviously is a big thing that you'll take into other parts of your life. Most of the guys on the team get pretty good grades, and they're spending 10 hours, 12 hours a week in practice, another 2 hours lifting, another couple hours on the bus. So that's definitely something that everybody can kind of take forward with them as well.
In fact, the average grade point average of our student athletes is higher than the student average, so we're always very proud of that. You made me think of something as well when you talked about Coach Phil, who's, for the listeners, Coach Phil Pisano. He's a pretty intense coach, and I think he pushes the student athletes hard. Is that a fair assessment? But I think there's a great deal of respect for him.
Yeah, I definitely think that Phil sees a lot in all the players that he's brought to campus and who's played on his team, and so he always wants to get the best out of everyone. So whether that's changing your technique or changing how you do something, it's not necessarily him saying, oh, you're not very good. It's saying you could be so much better, and he won't stop working till you get to that point.
And you've done exceptionally well as a team under him. So it's kudos to all of you. Well, I want to switch to the Schreier's Honors program that you were in. First of all, tell our audience a little bit, what is this idea of being in the Schreier's Honors College, and what's that about?
So the Schreier Honors College is pretty much committed to enhanced learning and kind of enhanced involvement on campus type of things. I believe it's roughly 2% of all Penn State students are in the Schreier Honors College. And basically what's going to happen is you can be accepted either as a freshman, sophomore, I believe juniors as late as you can get into the program. And then you'll take honors classes throughout your time here and then finish it all up with a thesis that you perform your own research on and basically have to write up by the end of your term at school.
So what was your thesis about?
It was about the implementation of Industry 4.0 in the plastics industry. So basically how technology and people interact and the way that it's going to interact going into the future in manufacturing.
Yeah, and Industry 4.0, it's a word we hear a lot. So how would you describe, what does Industry 4.0 mean?
I mean, Industry 4.0 is kind of similar to the Internet of Things, where you're basically looking at the implementation of sensors and other forms of data collection activity and being able to monitor them, not necessarily in the plant, but you can do it from your phone or you can do it from a computer, not necessarily on the floor, and basically being able to communicate from those systems to the people in the plant to make sure that everything's done at a more efficient process.
Yeah, the holy grail is almost everything has a sensor, and you're getting feedback, and you're changing the processes, and you're able to know what's going on at any given time, and we're getting real close to that. So what were some of the outcomes that you learned in your thesis?
I'd say probably the biggest outcome that I learned, which was kind of what I expected, is the United States, and especially in the plastics industry, is lagging some of our, other world-leading counterparts. Germany is a big one. Germany has a huge manufacturing base. A lot of their country is manufacturing, and I believe that their country as a whole is pretty far advanced past the United States. I mean, they're at the forefront. They're working towards Industry 5.0, which is interconnecting the entire company with other companies, that kind of thing. But then again, the plastics industry is lagging other industries in the United States. Some of it's somewhat of a newer industry. Some of there's just not as much research in that area as there are in some of the other areas as well.
Well, your thesis advisor was Dr. Greg Dillon in the Polymer Engineering and Science program in Plastics Technology. He's got this dual appointment. How did you end up working for Dr. Dillon?
I kind of talked with Dr. Perenne a little bit about, I think that I want to look at Industry 4.0 and that kind of stuff. And she'd kind of pointed me out to a couple professors, and he was one of the ones listed. And I reached out and was talking to him a little bit. And when I said some things, he had a bunch of different ideas. And I was like, I think this guy makes sense, and I kind of want to go forward with him because he's a really nice guy, and he's a really intelligent guy, and it was pretty fun working with him.
He's got a real research focus and a student favorite, as well as, and I'd be remiss not to say it, you've said her name multiple times, Dr. Diane Parente. So it sounds like she has had a large impact on your career here.
Oh, definitely. I think from the first day I came up here over the summer, before I even was enrolled in school, was talking to Dr. Perenne, and since then, she's been pretty much in charge of my schedule or helped me with my schedule for 5 years now. And if I have a problem, I give her a text or give her a call and say, "Hey, I need you to fix this for me," and somehow she always does. So.
She's great, and she's so passionate, and she's gotten so many students, particularly into the interdisciplinary business and engineering program. It is her baby.
Yeah. My roommate actually graduated with, or is going to graduate with the same ones as well. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your future. So you're in the Masters of Manufacturing Management program here. What are you thinking about doing after you graduate?
I'm not totally sure yet. I've been applying for a bunch of different types of jobs. So I've applied for different sales jobs in the plastics industry. I've applied for processing jobs as well. But I've also been talking to a couple of financial companies about consulting for the plastics industry and kind of that sort of route. I haven't necessarily figured out what I want to do for sure. I think it makes sense for me to find a company where I can get pretty much a wide view of the company, kind of like I did with Viking Plastics, and kind of have my hand in or have my foot in a lot of doors. But for sure, I'm not really sure yet. We'll see.
You've got a lot of time. You're young, and just go out there and try a few different things. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. Well, we're coming to the close, and I always like to give our guests the last word. Is there anything you'd like to add, JP?
I've had a great 5 years here. I think this is a place I'll hold close to my heart for a really long time. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Well, you're welcome. You have an impressive record. You've done a tremendous amount while you're here, and you're always welcome to come back to Barron's. So we're with you where you go for the rest of your life.
Cool.
Thank you.